All right, I am Reverend T. I am the unrefined priest, and today we're going to be returning to a topic that I looked at about a couple months ago on the Docuseries called The Religion Business. And there's a couple things I want to say up front about this. First of all, I highly recommend watching this Docuseries. I think it is an important series to look at, and what the series is doing is it's looking at finances, particularly in religion, and kind of bringing things to light and showing you, hey, some of this is not right. There's some really bad things that are going on financially in the church. There's some really shady things, and the church has found ways to get around doing certain things that we need to be aware of. And for me, as somebody in the church who is a priest in the Episcopal Church, I welcome this stuff. Let's look in, let's make sure that people are doing things on the up and up because they reflect on me. And I don't want to be lumped into the same category as Kenneth Copeland and Greg or Joel Osteen and all these other people like T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar. I don't want to be lumped in with them because they are doing shady things. So I think this video and videos like it, this docuseries, is very, very important. There are some bad sides to this docuseries, though, and I do want to bring out a couple of them right in the very beginning, and then I'm going to show you this clip. This is Shawn Ryan sitting down with Nathan, who did the docuseries. Shawn's just asking him questions about it. And one of the things that I think this docuseries misses is what Nathan is looking at are these large, giant mega churches. And then he's compiling all of this information from these large mega churches, these celebrity preachers, and then he's taking that information and he's saying, okay, these people are doing shady things, therefore every church, every pastor is doing shady things. And that's just not the case. And I'll share with you a couple reasons why that's not the case as I play this clip. But to make generalities like he does, just broad sweeping generalities, I think is dangerous. So I love the series. I love that he's exposing this. I love his work and I want to support him. What I want, though, would be for him to take an honest look at it. Maybe go to a small 300-member Presbyterian church and look at how they're doing things before you make statements, because the vast majority of churches out there are relatively small. And the overwhelming majority of churches are not doing the things that he's bringing up, even though if you press him on it, and Officer Tatum pressed him on this, Shawn Ryan is about to press him on this, and every time he's pressed on it, his gives the same answer. And the answer that he gives is, or the question that they raise is, how many churches are doing this? And he says the same thing, all of them. And that's just not true. So let me get this clip going, and then I'll break down each of the points that he is making, and we can look at it from there.
And so the system, like I said, when you take the business and the true church and blend it, it's a disease, because Christ's message is antithetical to legal systems. He was a counterculturalist, he didn't like, and here's what I love, because we're seeing this, we call it the death rattle in the show. We're seeing this happening in Washington right now. Church and state are colliding. So if Christ really wanted to transform the world through politics, he would have marched straight to Caesar and be like, I demand a meeting with Caesar. Mm-hmm. He could care less about Caesar. He said, I don't care about your politics and your games. You guys deal with that. I have to deal with the heart. And so we have to. So we have the ecclesia here, this is to deal with the heart, and then we have the business. The business is not inherently bad, but you have to call it a business. And right now, no one calls it a business because it's been infected, and we call this the church. I'm going to church. You don't go to church. You, Shawn, are the church. And then whatever that is, as it morphs and changes throughout the decades in history, sure, that's a place where we can meet and enjoy the donuts and coffee and listen to cool music, and that's not inherently bad. But that is a business, and oftentimes a multi-million-dollar business that's run with zero accountability. So you got to call a spade, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right, let me just... He's 100% correct on everything that he said. There is a business aspect to church. And the church is the body of Christ. The church is the people. It's not the building. It's not all the other sideshow stuff. The church is the people. And so we have a building right over there. And that building right now is a building. Now, on Sunday, when the people come into that place for the purpose of lifting up God's name, that building will transform into the church because the people are in the church, not because that building is the church. 100% correct here. I love the conversation, but now the conversation is going to go off the rails because Shawn Ryan's going to ask a really important question. So let's jump into that.
Do you have a percentage of, is this all churches, or is there specific ones that stick out to you? Is there a happy medium?
All of them play by the same rule book. And when you have a rule book with no accountability and all the power silos at the top, just like every pastor will be eaten by the system, every institution, every business will be eaten by that system. And that's why reform has to happen within the business itself. All
right. So you heard the question, is this all churches? And you heard the answer. Yes, it's all churches. That is 100% incorrect. And part of the disconnect here is that he's not drawing a distinction between denominations and non-denominational churches. And you need to draw that distinction. Is this potentially a problem in every non-denominational church? Yes, because they may or may not have accountability structures in place. But I can guarantee you, if you go to a Methodist church, a Presbyterian church, a Lutheran church, and an Episcopal church, there are accountability structures in place because every church and every pastor runs the danger of what he's saying being a reality. But we have put accountability structures in place a long time ago. And part of the problem of this docuseries is it's only examining non-denominational churches that are generally what we would regard as mega churches, that tend to not have the accountability structures in place. And the reason they don't is so that they can get around it. But the vast majority of churches out there are in denominations. And if you're looking at these denominational churches, almost all of them have accountability structures in place so that these things cannot take place. If I were to use the church money as my own personal piggy bank, it would take this church that I'm at right now about 1 month to catch on to what I was doing. Because we have accountability structures. Because there are other people that are tasked with looking at the finances and saying, where is this money going? Why did we spend money over here? And if there's unaccounted money being spent by me, they would pick up on it very, very quickly. So these, again, he is bringing up churches that do not have accountability structures, and he's saying all churches are doing this, and that is not the case. Now, I will give him this. is it a potential that all clergy could fall victim to doing shady things financially, sexually in the church? Yes, 100%. Is it likely that they would do that if there were no accountability structures in place? Yes, 100%. This is something that human beings are prone to fall toward, or prone to fall into. But because we know that, the church has made certain decisions to make sure that we can limit that as much as possible. And in the denominational churches, that is what you see. That's why a lot of people choose to be a part of a denomination, because it has an accountability structure that the non-denominational churches don't have. But to take the idea that all churches are doing shady things financially and to say that that's happening everywhere is just completely false. And it just shows all he would have to... Look, I'll give you the invitation. Come to Holy Apostles. I'll open up everything to you. You can walk through everything that's happening at Holy Apostles financially, and I'll show you the variety of accountability structures that prevent the very things that you are talking about that are taking place in other churches, but they're not widespread in the church at all. It's just false. Let's get into a little bit more.
And so we're begging people to actually deepen their faith and deepen their giving while bringing reform to the machine that we've built. Mm-hmm. And this isn't inherently bad, but it's corrupted and dark. It's the darkest business entity you can start in the U.S. We've talked with ex-mafiosos who spent decades in prison, and they say, Nathan, I wouldn't join the mafia today. I'd start a church, because it's the most dark place it's the darkest place you can play.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why did this guy's 28,000 square foot home in Tampa get raided by the FBI?
Enough people. So this is where you can finally, this is the little sliver of hope, is if enough people complain to the IRS or the FBI, they will open an investigation. And our good friends, RPIs.
All right. So he's talking about David Taylor, whose home just got raided, rightfully so. David Taylor is a shady pastor who never should have been in a church in the first place. But again, what is David Taylor? He's the pastor of a non-denominational church that does not have accountability structures, and that's why he was able to do what he was able to do, because David E. Taylor would never make it in the Presbyterian church or the Lutheran church or the Episcopal church, simply because of the accountability structures that are already in place. The church has been around for a very long time. And although we fully admit that this could easily become a problem for any pastor, any church, there are ways to minimize or to safeguard the practices of the church, and most of the denominations have already done that a long time ago, because we ran into problems. So I'm not saying that clergy are above doing this. But what I am saying is that churches know that clergy are not above doing this, and therefore safeguards have been put in place to keep the clergy from having access to the money. I have zero access to money at Holy Apostles. Zero. And that is how it should be. Because the money is not my money, it is the church's money. There are ways that you can set this up that make it so that the clergy can't act on their very human instincts. And most denominations have done that. So his whole thing about the mafia and the church being the darkest place. Yeah, the church can be a very dark place. It can also be a place of light and hope. And it is dependent upon the structures of the church and the leadership to make sure that you are a place of light and hope and peace and grace and love, rather than a place that is looking out for itself and destroying people's lives. And so I wish that the person who had made this series was more responsible in their language, because it's heartbreaking to hear somebody say all churches are corrupt, all churches are dirty and nasty, and all you got to do is dig deep enough and you will find the dirt and the nastiness and the corruption, when that's just not true. It's just not the case. So I'm going to move ahead to show you just one more clip in here. It's a fascinating interview. I do, check out Shawn Ryan's podcast. It's excellent, an excellent interview. Here we go.
All right, Nathan, we're back from the break. So we want to get into some big stats, overall stats on, how much money is going out, how much they're saving, how much they're giving, whatever statistics you want to share. And then I want to go through specific examples of who you've seen with, inside the corruption through all your research. So we'll start with the big stats. Let's do that.
So the religion business looks at the nonprofit sector as a whole, right? And like I said, we go down to the legal architecture. We talked about some history there. About 1.5 trillion a year is given by individual donors to nonprofits.
1.5 trillion?
Okay, look, that's a really big number, $1.5 trillion given. But listen to what he said. We're looking at the nonprofit sector as a whole. That is not just churches. Even though when he talks about it in the context of it just being churches. That is not the case. But there is a lot of money that goes into churches that are out there. Most churches are struggling to be able to pay the bills. That's the reality. So you can look at fringe churches that are bringing in millions and millions of dollars. The guys like David E. Taylor. You can look at those guys and you can say, look, this is happening. But you also have to note that is an extreme example. That most churches, the vast majority of churches, are not bringing in anything like that. The vast majority of churches sit around 50 members. That's it. 50 people on a Sunday. They're not bringing in millions and millions of dollars. Your typical church is anywhere between 50 to 100 members. They're not bringing in millions of dollars, and chances are they have a faithful pastor that is overseeing that congregation who is making around $50,000, and that is it. It's very easy to look at the Joel Osteens and the Joyce Meyers and the Creflo Dollars and say all of them are like that. The reality is that those are the extreme edges. Those are the extreme cases. The vast majority of pastors are serving their congregations faithfully, and their congregations are anywhere between 50 and 100 people, and they're not abusing them. They're not scamming them for money. They're trying their best to give them Christ. And this is what I do not like about this docuseries, is that it paints all churches as doing the same thing. Now, if he would have just entered into this with the idea of, I want to expose those churches that are doing shady things, I would be 100% behind this docuseries. I would have, I'd be having holy apostles watch these videos. We would be talking about this. I'd be doing teaching series on this, because I think exposing corruption in the church is a very important thing, and we all need to get to that work. But to be so irresponsible with your language as to say, this is what I found, this is gross, and all churches are guilty of doing this, I just don't have a whole lot of patience for that. Because you're throwing a lot of people under the bus unnecessarily, unjustly. You're throwing people under the bus, and now you're creating a culture in which people are looking at faithful preachers of the gospel, and they're looking at them sideways. They're looking at them saying, what are you taking? What kind of money are you getting out of this? And again, it is happening. And we want to expose where it's happening. But we don't want to just take a paintbrush and paint everything with that brush. The vast majority of clergy out there are serving their congregations faithfully, and they're not bringing in millions of dollars. In fact, a lot of clergy are working an extra job because what they get paid as a pastor is not enough to actually live on. So, yeah, let's expose the corruption, but let's do it responsibly. And I don't think that this series does it responsibly. And in the interviews that I've seen Nathan give, he's not being responsible with his language. And he's actually doing the very thing that he's coming against churches for doing. He is creating a stir, making these bold statements so that more people will watch him, so that he'll bring in more money. More people, more money. It's irresponsible. And so, I want to applaud the work. But I also need to call out when you've gone too far. When you've taken your extreme examples and just applied it across the board. No, that doesn't fly for me. And it shouldn't fly for you either. And if you're in a church, you're in a normal average church, something like, 100 to, 400 people on a Sunday, chances are you got a pastor that loves the congregation and is giving the congregation everything that they got. And they deserve better than being told that they're all scammers. Let's get the scammers out of it and allow the true pastors to pastor their congregations. My name is Reverend T. I am the Unrefined Priest. If you like what I'm doing, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you on the next one.